They do not need introduction to Advocate Didi Lachman Messer. She's certainly not a person to miss, and I believe social innovators in Israel have already benefited from her vast experience and new learning, as well as from her great passion. Didi served until recently as the Deputy Attorney General of Israel, and among her major achievements, she led the legislation of the new corporate law in Israel, including the chapter on public interest companies. She was also deeply involved in the legislation of the capital market, taxations, and others. She holds a first and graduate degree from the Law School of Hebrew University and teaches in several universities and colleges around Israel. Didi, please.
Hi. Well, now that my presentation is gone, that's it. So I can say, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to present some kind of a vision. And the title of my lecture today will be for you, if I have, let's see the first one. Okay. Social investment, a new approach to funding social issues and the Israeli scene. I just have to say in the beginning, I would not be able to encompass all those topics, but just to give you a short outlook at the Israeli situation. Well, we had just heard an amazing presentation by Dr. Matthias, and thank you very much. And I do say that there can be a distinction or different approaches to the idea of social investment. For my presentation, I would like to characterize social investment as something else, and this is a result of a report on social investment that we have been conducting for the last year. The report will include the chapter on the American scene as well, prepared by the Milken Institute. Professor Glenn Yago is here with us as well. And it concludes the work of a team initiated by Yad HaNadiv, who is a very big charitable foundation, including my friend Yaron Mariav, El Alkalai, El Yasraf Yudagoa, and myself. And special thanks to Elad Katz and Yael Shaigi. I always have to say it because without them, this work would not have been accomplished. Okay, so what do we mean by social investment? I would try to characterize it as a special method of funding social issues, engaged by different actors, looking for social and financial returns. By this, I differ from my friend before, in different relations between them. Financial return can be zero, but it's still an approach to grant making, which is oriented by an investment approach rather by just a giving approach. And the question is, what do we mean by the idea of investment? Those methods of funding are mainly based on capital market approach and solutions. And why is it so? How come the business approach had come to the philanthropic? We have just looked into the dictionary. What is the meaning of philanthropy? Philanthropy is love of humanity. So how come we start to bring business methods and approaches to love of humanity? Well, this is a question I will leave to the end of my lecture, if I may, or leave it with you to answer each of you to yourself. But the reason and the main grounds, common grounds between the philanthropic sector and maybe the business sector as well, is the problem of scarcity of resources. And therefore, the business community has developed methods of dealing with scarcity of resources, especially of funding, that now, in a way, looking at this problem of humanity and society, we have to admit that we'll always have a scarcity of resources. And therefore, we can look at other markets where the same problem has happened for many years and the methods they have developed to deal with the problem of scarcity of resources. So the main demand for such funding and their recipients will be the social firms, the social enterprise, who undertake to deal with social issues. And what do we mean by social enterprise? They can have different forms of incorporation, as we saw at the table, but all have a social purpose and all require a special and new funding. If we go to the capital market model, and I beg you to come with me to this stroll, the short stroll, what do we see in the capital market? We see the supply side, the demand side, and in the middle, the intermediaries. Each of them have a very special role in developing the capital market, dealing with the problem of supply of funding. For example, on the supply side, if each of us was to invest in a corporation or to give it a loan, we wouldn't be able to do it. Problem of the scarcity of people, I mean the desperation of people and investors and so forth. And on the other side, the firms have to be ready to be invested in, whether it's debt or equity, and be able to deliver the results to the supply side. Now, who come in between those things are the financial intermediaries. First, the banks, the historical of the banks. They take our deposit, and they know how to loan it to the recipient, the supply side, the firms. The firms have to return it, and then we have market forces, whether they exist or not nowadays. It's another question, but let's assume in the model of capital market, there are market forces that punish the moral hazard of firms that do not repay their debts. And that's how we can manage the idea of people more supplying their funds in order to lend it to the firms. In the next stage of the capital market, we see the non-bank intermediaries, and I would like to elucidate a little bit on them. We have the institutional investors who manage all our pension, and now all, maybe all the citizens of the world's pension, and try to find a way of investing the money in order to have a best financial return. Also, we have equity funds, private banking, and we have financial specialists. What are they doing, those financial intermediaries? They are really accommodating, if I can say so, or make the supply side meet the demand side, and make the demand side return the interest for the supply side, the interest or whether the equity or the gains. So the financial intermediaries are the key players of the capital market. And I don't think we will have capital market without those intermediaries who can do, who can put together a large amount of money, can accommodate them to the demand side of the firms, can educate and help the firms to progress, to make more gains, to acquire more funding, etc. This model of the capital market model has been developed in Israel as well lately after the Bahar report. And we have today all those players in the Israeli capital market. Good or bad, it's another question. If we go back, the vision is looking at the social market to develop a social capital market. This is the new approach I would like to put forward to you, by trying to remember what we saw before and trying to reverse it or to adapt it to the social side. What do we see here? We see on the supply side all the forms of funding social issues. And when I mean in funding, I mean in the broad word. We have public budget funding, we have philanthropy grants. Those are the main methods of funding that exist today. And then we have the future, or which bulbs we start seeing today, social investment from all sectors. And when I mean by all sectors, the dream could be that maybe tomorrow institutional investors also will be part of the game of social investment. And I was asked yesterday, why would they do so? Because they have to guarantee our pension. And if they have to guarantee our pension, can they go to the social capital market? And my answer is, social issues are the problem of the society of a whole. They are not the problem of the philanthropist only and of the government only. Social issues are a problem of all the players in the field, the companies and us with our pension funds. So if institutional investors will try to develop the idea, who are they managing their money for? They're managing it for us, for our old age. Some of us will arrive to it quicker than others. And if we will live in a society where there will be big disparity of income, where there will be few people lying on the street, will be robbers on people or homelessness or uneducated people, then the value of our life as pensioners getting this pension will be much lower. So maybe it's an idea that also institutional investors have to play a part in the social investment market if there is a financial return that justifies such kind of investment. So if I would say the supply side has two independent actors acting today, sometimes matching funds together and sometimes not, but in the future I foresee and I hope to see many more players that will join the ground and will embark on this new social capital market. On the demand side are the social firms, social enterprises and social issues. All of them require the social funding and all of them can deliver results. The question is of measurement. Financial measurement is something we know to deal with it. Although we all have to admit it had become very creative lately with the IFRS. So just as we have creative methods of measurement in the financial world, we can create creative methods of measurement in the social world. And those methods of measurement represent a social asset that can be interpreted into the social and financial goals of the social investment. So who are the social firms? The social firms can all the spectrum of the NGO, although some of those, especially those who are the advocacy NGOs, would not like an investment as such, but social investment can be, in my opinion, also a grant. Now, social enterprises and social issues can be also on the demand side, as we have seen. Social issues of prevention can be a very interesting method and solution of funding with the idea of the social impact bond initiated by Sir Ronald Cohen, whom work we admire, respect, and hopefully will be able to have it in Israel as well. So we have the supply side, we have the demand side. Both sides have to know each other. Both sides have to progress to be able to get the investment from the supply side to the demand side. But who do we miss? We miss all the financial intermediaries that we have seen before had the final and a very important role in developing capital markets. First of all, we do not have banks with ethical and social approaches in Israel. In the world, we have seen the approach of Triodos Bank, which is an amazing approach to deposits. We see Charity Bank in England, a result of the involvement of the British government. And we start to see different initiatives of banks to tackle the social investment lending market as banks, something to be developed. Non-bank social financial intermediaries do not exist yet in Israel. They start to exist in the world. Who are they? They are experts, financial and social experts, who join forces together in order to develop the social investment world. Let me show you some kind of example we see in England, which we had the chance to learn the scene with Yad Nadiv. So I know it's very hard to see it, but we have the mainstream and specialist bank on the left-hand side. We have specialist intermediary like Bridgewest, cooperative and community finance, and we have government-backed funds. I'm saying it aloud, I cry it out and aloud because there is a place for the government to initiate the social capital market by giving funds, not only by budgeting. Government-backed funds of future buildings in England, Adventure Capital Fund, Department of Health, Social Enterprise Investment Funds, and lots of other funds were created for the social investment scene, with the first monies or the second monies being government funding. And then we have the new ideas, the social venture Triodos Opportunities Fund, and some grant, trust, and philanthropists. You see, the low risk to the high risk, all together are developing the social capital market. Those are the bodies that exist in England, the special social finance specialists, and all of them have the lovely names. And the very important thing I would like to notice out is Bridges for First, and also Triodos Bank and Esme Fairbairn. All those are, I can't go into details because of shortened of time, but if you're interested, we can one day or another show that the matching of monies from government, philanthropists, special enterprises, and sometimes business firms, and hopefully institutional investor can create a fund by which different risk approaches of the investors can enlarge the whole of the sums instead of dividing it like we saw before between grant making and social investment. What I mean by this, that the philanthropic money and the government money, some of those funds are the last cushion. They do not want a financial return, and therefore they can be as guarantors or cushion for the other investor, and together make a bigger portfolio for social investment, which have a financial return for some of the players, although not necessarily for all of them. A new method of financing, lots of actors, the special intermediaries that we saw before that do not exist, start to exist. The British government have acknowledged their importance, have published in February 2011 a very deep report, in-depth report, trying to say that the social capital market could be the future only if all parties and all actors join forces together after the government. The government has a very special role in all capital market. It is the regulator, it is the enhancer, it is the one who penalizes if you do such and such behavior, and it's the one that sometimes hold behind the development of a social capital market. The social enterprise of the demand side, so we saw the supply side, we saw the financial intermediaries, and now I would like to go to the social enterprise. What is the issue of our meeting today? As we said, there are different kinds of incorporation. First of all, we'll go into the non-profit. Now, the new social enterprise in the non-profit sector can have an income. The income derives specially of supply of social services for the government. But the supply of social services for the government should be accepted by the government and should be funded and paid for in real amount, not as underpaid. The problem of underpaid NGO that supplies social services would not be able to give a platform for the supply side of investment. Only if you pay the real price of the social services delivered by those NGO, then they can have a reason to require funding to develop and to become sustainable. So A, income derives from supply of social services. 2, income derives from revenues of selling goods or services connected to the social purpose and serving it, performed by the organization or a sub-entity of the organization. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that social enterprise have discovered that sometimes if they develop services that can be sold using the population which they would like to serve with their services, can deliver 2 results. First of all, there is an income, and then there is a sense of esteem. The most important social enterprise I see who has developed such a concept is the American REDF. REDF, whose stories I think is really inspiring, was trying to find places for ex-convicts' work. This is one of their jobs, so I would like just go into this one. Now, nobody wants to employ ex-convicts. Ex-convicts are a threat. Ex-convicts, we do have to put a lot of work into them. So who wants to apply ex-convicts? In Israel, also there is a problem with it, all over the world. So what REDF has discovered, that instead of looking for employers that will hire those ex-convicts, they will develop a service by which those ex-convicts will work, gardening company, and they will apply for municipality contracts, maybe trying to convince them to give them a higher priority because they pursue a social good and a social action. And by this, they will have also revenue and also self-esteem, that those people have found work, and therefore they can be brought back into society and finding a solution for their employment. So by this, we see a social enterprise whose social goal was helping ex-convicts, developing a service by generating income and social value. Very important to try to see how we can find solution for special population who have a problem to approach the working market by developing their own solution, grassroots solution, and then helping them, giving them self-esteem to find a place in society. The third kind of nonprofit will be income derives from a revenue of a commercial activity undertaken by a daughter for-profit company in order to generate revenue for social activity. I would like to give here the example of an Israeli idea, an Israeli dream that I hope will be fulfilled. And the idea is the idea of Tirat HaKarmel, the foundation of Tirat HaKarmel, which is a non-profit foundation, which had the idea to create a company that will compete for solar energy on the roof of the municipality whose population is being served by this foundation, by this non-profit organization. But unfortunately, for the time being, those who opposed it was the Israeli government, both ministries of energy, interior, and Ministry of Justice. It's hard for me to say it because I come from there, find all kinds of reasons why not to allow such a way of doing a commercial purpose for the best of the community, using the facility of the community to generate revenue for the benefit of the community. This is an example of a for-profit sub-company of a non-profit organization. Other example, most common to you, would be shops in England of the homeless organization, I just exactly don't remember the name, who have retail shop. They sell old clothes, they sell used clothes, they have revenue, all the revenue. Now the operation is not connected to the core business of the society, but it's still a business operation operated sometimes by volunteers, people who support the cause of the organization and who revenue serve the purpose of the nonprofit. Okay, a second idea of a second type of social enterprise, which is the new social enterprise, will be a for-profit social enterprise. What is this? Is it a new animal? No, it is not. It is a new kind of a corporation. It's a corporation with the financial and social purposes. Such things can happen, especially companies who try to find places for people in the working field or other problems in our society, and they can both have gains if they sell their services, if they get money, government funding. They can be for profit and for social matters. I'm aware that there could be some kind of a conflict, but we have so many conflicts in the business world that I always say to my friends, we can start having conflict in the social world and we would not even meet the conflict of interest that we have in the business world, where I come from as a lawyer, okay? So we have a corporation with a financial and a social purpose. All activities are being operated as social business. They need of funding. For all of them, main problem is the need of funding for the various stage of development. We have seen in both our previous presentation that each social enterprise have a different size of growth, needs different kind of funding, and that's where we need the financial social specialist to adapt the supply side to the demand side of the enterprise at the different stage of growth. New approaches are needed for new kinds of cooperation and new kinds of funding methods. The distinction of two types of cooperation is not suitable anymore to the new social approaches. The word is not black and white, it's mainly gray, and the business sector cannot ignore the social problems because we all live in the same world. Therefore, the idea that has been brought up by the English and then by Canadian and Australian as well, I hope, is a need to create a third type of cooperation for social and for-profit cooperation. Now, when I encountered for the first time this idea of community interest corporation, which is a corporation, a for-profit corporation that has a social purpose and can divide up to 30% or 20% of its gains as dividend to its shareholders. Like this, you can attract also equity investment that have a social purpose but would like to have a gain with a social purpose. So when we present this idea, people look at us and say, what is it? Is it a new animal? Maybe it's the new kind of corporation for the 21st century. A corporation that links together social and financial approach, that links together social and financial investors. It has a future, and it's for sure worth a try. when I present it to doing corporate law for so many years, people say, but there's only two types of corporation. No. If we are entrepreneurs, as Eric Ben-Hammer said this morning, we can also be legal entrepreneurs. And legal entrepreneurship is providing legal solutions to problems that are not answered by the old legal terms. And therefore, community interest corporation is just one type of legal solution. Other type of legal entrepreneurship is needed and required, as well as financial, if we want to develop this kind of new world. In US, we have the B-type corporation, and in Israel, we have nothing. We have a lack of recognition and acceptance. The usual approach is you either should be this or this. Even the commercial activity of a non-profit is not well accepted, is looked upon suspiciously. Are you competing with the business world? Because if you compete with the business world and you get a tax deductible, this is not fair for the small business companies. I heard this argument before. Maybe it is not fair, but maybe it's achieving a social purpose. And the question is that maybe sometimes we have to switch from one idea to another if we want to jump, as entrepreneurs normally do when they do their inventions. So we also need new kind of funding methods. We need special actors who can fund and promote social enterprise, who can provide financial solutions from the supply side to the demand side to the various stage of growth of the social enterprise in order to allow it to fulfill its social role, its sustainability, to grow, to offer new services. All of this also requires some business approach of the NGO. Both sides should change the disc and the framing and the way of thinking. An NGO cannot say always, I have a social goal, please do not apply any business word values to me because I do not accept those values. I'm a social enterprise. If you want to be an enterprise and if you want to be sustainable, you have to see how to grow and how to get new funding. And if you want to get new funding, you have to prove proofs that you deserve this funding. So I think the mentorship, the business mentorship that IVN is offering is essential. And also it is essential that those new kind of financial specialists will be able to promote and to develop the social enterprise in order to make it ready for investment. Investment-ready social enterprise skills are what are required from the new social financial intermediaries. Because both sides have to switch their disc of the way of thinking. Both sides should adapt how to meet each other and not how to say, my way is better than yours. We can only jump a step ahead if we all combine forces together to a new world, knowing that such a world can exist if we all put our mind into it. There might be failures, there might be disasters, but when you look at the market, the business market, thank God after 2008, we also have disasters there. And why do I say thank God? Because everybody knows now that no model is foolproof. But it doesn't mean we're going to leave the capital markets, and it doesn't mean we have to leave the social capital market idea. On the contrary, both have to grow, both have to learn from mistakes, but none should overcome the other. That's my way of thinking. Okay, so let's go to the Israeli scene after trying to describe the future of the world and see what we have here. Is there social investment in Israel? Yes, but not really. Let me try to put my point. Being out of the government, I allow myself to be a little bit critical, not for you as guests, but for you as participant in this discourse in order to help the government to change its opinion and its policies. Okay, so what do we have? The Israeli scene differs in its approach in investing in social issues. This is my statement. I would like to prove it to you. From one hand, the government is deeply involved in promoting solutions for unemployment or developing the periphery by awarding economic benefits. But to whom? Only to industrial companies, to for-profit companies who locate their factories in distant areas or who employ underemployed. So the idea of the government is that the source of solving the social problem is the business world. And they're willing to give the business world, especially by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, lots of benefits. Like saying to them, we know it has no financial gains, so we will gap the difference between, it's not a subsidy, it's an economic incentive. It's a tax incentive. But all those incentives are given to the business community in order to ask them to help with social problems. This is very important. It should be continuous. It's millions of dollars. But there are also social enterprise who do such kind of work. And they do not get such kind of economic benefits. And we should ask ourselves why. There's also special legislature, with economic, also my French, with economic incentive to encourage for-profit firms to invest in special geographic areas. Very important. This is a social investment approach. It comes to the firm, it gives them incentive to invest in solving some social issues. But on the other hand, all other social issues are looked upon as social services. And once you do the distinction between unemployment and social services, first of all, there are different ministries. The Ministry of Industry deals with unemployment. The Ministries of Welfare deals with welfare. And social services are being categorized as welfare. And suddenly you see a totally different approach. Social services are provided mainly by non-profit organizations, maybe social enterprise. The minimum funding is mainly government procurement budget and philanthropy grants, sometimes under government, budgeted. Both in essence are not in a social investment approach. No consolidation of resources with a financial and funding approach. And when you look at the government contracts with those social enterprise, it's a service contract by which the government, who's the buyer, wants to get the cheapest price, has no preferential for a social enterprise for a for-profit enterprise. So instead of adopting a social investment approach and to ask yourself, for example, who will best fulfill a social service? Will it be a non-profit, a for-profit, or a social enterprise? All three of them? Maybe. Let's check their performances. Let's check who is bringing us a better result. None of this impact assessment is being done. Now we have seen first signs. We're trying to convince, I'm also sitting in an organization called Midot, who's trying to develop impact assessment for NGOs and for trying to assess, to bring the government to look at the impact of their investment. What have you accomplished? What are your results? What are your consequences? And can you approach a funding method, not only a procurement method? And a funding method is different from a procurement method. Even if you want to have a procurement contract, do you take funding consideration into the price of the service? And if you do not take it, why do you take funding consideration when Intel receives millions of dollars to put their plant in the Negev, which is very important, but we do understand that Intel has funding problems, but social enterprise necessarily are not looked upon as business enterprise that fulfill social goals. This is my main criticism. My friends from the government, excuse me for doing it, but after looking at what's happening, I'm asking myself, why do we like the business side, and why do we suspect the non-profit side? It has gone back into the history and the politics of Israel, maybe. So, no impact investment is a notion and a goal. And my result, my said result, is that I think there is inefficiency of resources allocation. Instead of having a consolidation of resources between the grant making, the philanthropy, impact investment, the government, like we saw in England, like we saw in other countries, we have different approaches by the philanthropist as well and by the government. And the philanthropist, as a big community, can also ask the government to embark on the new social investment approach. But they are not necessarily there. because they are also thinking that their goal is to help the social enterprise to bridge between the deficiency of the government funding to fulfilling the social goals. So we do not have social investment approach, or we have it only the beginning. We have few funds. Some of those friends are sitting here. They're doing a pioneer work. Chanoch Bakat Duali, Cecile Belilius and Sherpa, a pioneer work in trying to develop social investment funding to social enterprise. But we still have a big inefficiency of resources allocation, and the idea of social enterprise and social investment needs of a recognition. The notion of social enterprise is still not accepted by the Israeli government as such, or by different regulator, but there is a need and a hope for a change. The notion of smart social investment is in its embryonic stage, as I just said. The way to change this notion is with examples of what's happening in other countries and its successes, and it's with your help. Thank you.